that was kind of predictable because DJs had always wanted to have those type of tracks as long as I can remember. Even back in the 70s, to have a track that was just percussion was always something that that was always your secret weapon. So I knew that was actually, something that was, that was probably inevitable to come with technology. And then, it went into a couple of other different twists and turns by the end of the 90s. And for a moment, I thought that maybe, we might have an opportunity to kind of get back to the original sound, of the mid-'80s. Where the music was more structured, where there was more concept behind the individual tracks, and then we would begin to start to make more albums. As my generation was getting a little bit older, generally you would think that we would get, as we get older, we get better at what we do, so we would begin to kind of manipulate the music a little bit more. For me, I got into, I began to make music for films and things like that, and then minimal house came, and electro came, and which was a complete surprise because I thought that by then a lot of electronic music producers understood that electronic music had enough foundation that you did not need to borrow from other genres in that way.
Well said. Yeah.
And when I began to kind of see that a lot of electronic musicians were borrowing things from rock music and trying to blur the lines between electronic music and rock, it really reminded me of what was happening in the early 80s when a lot of rock musicians were trying to cross over into dance music. There were quite a few successes then because people were still, dancing from, the post-disco era was still, but it didn't, I don't think it really happened the same way this time, and I think that I think people were a little bit more. I mean, the idea of mixing those two genres together, where it got more, the music was borrowing from punk and all that stuff, and I thought that, that's nothing new. We had seen that before, and that to me was the beginning of this cycle where we're beginning to repeat ourselves over and over again. Based off of our influences, Until then, we were really striving to create new sounds like jungle and drum and bass and all that stuff, and all that. And then that was really the first time that I really seen that now there's a majority of the people that's in electronic music that now feels that we need to begin to kind of repeat ourselves, or maybe they had forgotten that we had already done that.
Yeah.
And so there, becomes, we entered into an era where electronic music producers were frequently snatching things from other genres, blatantly sampling and looping them, and then reintroducing it to a new generation of people, and not telling them that these things had already been done. And so that kind of took us into a direction in which I thought that was really not necessary. I had hoped that maybe we could have, taken it from this tribal, really aggressive type of tribal thing, and went off into something much more psychedelic, much more, organic, much more progressive. But we didn't. We took a turn and began to go back.
That was Jeff Mills. And now for some music. We begin with the opening track from Waveform Transmission Volume 1, Phase 4. An incredibly hard and in some ways slightly daunting tune, though, as I believe with a lot of Jeff Mills' music, incredibly melodic. If Your Senses Have Survived, that was Jeff Mills performing Phase 4. Our next selection is the classic Changes of Life, a tune which Mills repeatedly played in his sets throughout the 90s. I saw him on several occasions at the Complex and at the Big Love Festival in Otmore Park in 1996. And every time he played this, crowds would literally be devastated. So, here is Jeff Mills performing Changes of Life.